my co-host Jason Sokol tonight, jumping on to talk some Olympic basketball.
Fun stuff, Mike. I've got some things to tell you here really quickly before we start talking about this.
All right, I'm ready.
I've watched more Olympic golf than I have Olympic basketball.
All right, well, we're not going to get any Olympic golf analysis tonight, so I got
Hey,
nothing.
Scotty Scheffler, baby, 29 on the back nine, got the gold medal. There you go.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I also on Monday woke up because I teach in Homestead Falls, and Katie Najat, now Katie Moon, was jumping for pole vault, and I woke up at 4:40 a.m. just to watch her jump and qualify. So that was exciting.
There
So
you go. When's the finals?
Tomorrow, 11:15. I think she'll medal for sure. I think she's got a really great shot at gold. I think we'll see. The girl who won the world championships earlier this year didn't even make it to through the qualifying stage. So we'll
The
see.
Olympics is heartbreaking, man, when you start talking about events like that people train for 4 years and they have such a teeny tiny window that if things go poorly, that
I
they
mean,
don't make it. I
I
mean,
mean,
it's crazy. I
yeah.
saw something. I don't know if you saw this on Twitter, but there was a tweet I saw about Usain Bolt, and basically it said Usain Bolt spent less than whatever it was, less than 30 seconds at the Olympics actually running his 100-meter races, and yet he trained, whatever, 20 years for those 30 seconds. And the fact that somebody like him who, look, the 100, you can false start. There's lots of things that can potentially go wrong. And for a guy like Bolt to win 3 straight 100-meter finals in the Olympics is pretty incredible when you really think about it.
I mean, well, and I know, like, listen, you say that about the actual, like, I shouldn't say actual, it's the Olympians that are doing the track and field stuff, but like, look at the golfers, okay, who play golf regularly. It's not as heartbreaking, but I don't think you could tell John Rahm, who was up 4 strokes with 7 holes to go, and he didn't, or I think he ended up, I think he got a medal. I think he got a medal, but he choked. He choked down the stretch, and it was heartbreaking for him. But it was USA's win with that gold. So there we go. All
Yeah,
right, so let's get to bat.
probably not the same. Probably not the same
No, it doesn't. It
level.
doesn't have.
Obviously,
But I will say,
obviously,
I will say, those Scheffler, when they played the national anthem, he was like tearing up. So it meant something to
yeah,
him.
completely
And
understandable. Oh yeah,
and,
completely
and my and
understandable.
my favorite thing was they had like the golfers, and they had to like write my name. Like the first day of school signs that we have for kids that they say my first day of school. Well, they had ones for all the golfers, and it was like everyone else was to win a medal, to win a medal. And he's like, "What do you hope to get from this week?" And he said, "I just want to have fun." That's what Scheffler, and then he ended up winning the gold medal. So I think that was pretty awesome. I think that was
That's
pretty
pretty
cool.
cool.
So,
Yeah,
so
sort
all
of
right,
speaks to the process, right? Speaks to
yeah,
the process, which we talk about a lot on here. So,
yeah.
all right,
All right,
Olympic
so let's
hoops
get to let's
quarterfinals today. You want to start with the U.S. and then go from there?
yeah, let's start with the U.S. Obviously, the U.S. I watched. It was the middle. I was running. We had a little skills camp, so I was running it, and then we had a bit of a weather situation going on here, so I didn't even get home until later than anticipated because I don't know about you, but Pearl Road was a disaster area when I was leaving the rec center today, so I kind of just pulled over and hung out for a little bit, and then
There's a
I
little
ended up getting
flooding. There's a little
a little bit
flooding.
of flooding, people driving erratically. I saw someone completely. I saw someone completely. Um, what's it called? Hydroplane, and going cross Pro Road. So I was like, you know what? I think I'm gonna sit this one out for a little bit. So I sat it out for a little bit. Anyways, it was not. So I didn't watch any of the games. Long story short, I did not watch any of the game, but I went and looked at it, and I saw Embiid had an amazing first half. He played great in the first half. The team ended up winning by what? 20 some 30 maybe
25, I think it finally
25,
was the
but
final.
there was a
Yeah,
point they were up by 34. I know, I saw it while I was scrolling or something like that. So it, this was never, in my opinion, was never the game that was going to be in doubt. I mean, Brazil didn't really have anyone that was going to compete with us. They hung around. I know it, like halfway through the second quarter, it was like 45-34 or something like that. It was an 11-point game. So Brazil was still in the game, but it wasn't going to happen for Brazil. And once again, Team USA just taking care of business, I suppose, and they're going to get to play against Serbia. I don't. Did you see any of the highlights from the game, or did you check out any of the highlights? I liked the LeBron alley-oop pass to your favorite player, Jason Tatum. Did you see that play?
I did see that. I saw Anthony Davis had a nice putback
Oh, that
dunk.
dunk, the dunk. That was late, right? That was pretty late. I don't know. I don't
Yeah,
know why Anthony Davis is out there when they're up 20 with like 2 minutes left or 3 minutes left. But I'm gonna leave the coaching decisions to Steve Kerr. But
he's
uh,
durable, man. He's durable
oh,
now after this season.
he's about as durable as I was today after doing bleachers at cross country and then hobbling into basketball skills challenge. I was pretty sore. I don't know. Anyways, I don't know what else to say about them. They should win the gold. That's what I'm gonna say. They have to play Serbia. They've beaten them twice. It's always hard to beat an opponent 3 times in a row. But I, other than Jokic, Serbia's got no one, and that's gonna do it. That should theoretically do anything against the.
Bogdan, they got Bogdan.
Oh, come on, against
Hey,
our team.
he's scoring more points per game than anybody on the U.S. team.
Yeah, but they don't have to score points per game because they've got 12 guys who can score and
Who's
play
our leading
basketball.
scorer? Do you know? Do you know who our leading scorer is?
Is this a quiz? Let me take a
Oh, I
guess.
mean, I just have it pulled up in front of me, so I figured I'd ask. It's a good way to
Okay, I'm gonna
segue
guess
to that.
Durant. I'm gonna guess it's Durant, or
It
it's
is
either.
not Durant.
Is it a
It's not
starter?
Durant.
Is it a starter?
It is not a starter. Durant's a second leading scorer. He's averaging
I know he Durant
14,
passed
14, 14.8 for Durant.
Durant passed. He's now the all-time leading scorer in Olympic basketball, USA Olympic basketball history. Today he passed. He passed. Did you see that?
I did.
Yeah,
Congrats to
yeah.
KD.
It's not a starter, huh?
Not a
Well,
starter.
probably Anthony Davis then.
No, not Anthony Davis, but same first name.
Oh, Ant. Hey, I
Yeah.
want you to know at basketball camp today, Mike, I put out an Anthony Edwards card and I said, I think when LeBron retires, that's probably the face of the NBA. And I got zero reaction from any of the kids.
Kids
And I
didn't
was like,
know. Yeah, kids don't know. I mean, just as a
come on,
general
man.
rule, I would say kids don't know really. It's kind of scary, man, for sports,
He's going
honestly,
to be
for
the face of
professional
the
sports.
NBA. Mike, do you agree? He's probably got a very good chance to be the face of the
He's
NBA
got a
when
good shot.
retires.
Got a good
I mean,
chance at it. He's as likely as
he was the
anybody.
leading scorer last year, right? Too. He was the
Yeah.
leading scorer
Yep.
last year.
Yep.
I mean, if he's
Yep.
the leading scorer on this roster, come on, man. Give him his flowers,
16.8
kids.
points. 16.8 points per game in how many minutes you think?
Probably I only know is when I had looked at the last two games, no one had played more than like that was off the bench had played more than like 14 minutes. So I'm gonna say he's doing that in like 15 minutes a game.
18. So not bad.
Okay.
Not bad. So 18.7 minutes, 16.8 points per game, over the course of
that's
4
a
games.
point a minute.
So
that's a point a minute,
it's not
basically.
bad. It's not bad. It's getting his shots
That's
up.
kind of production.
Let's
That's
put it
kind
that way.
of what's his field goal percentage? Do you have that there? Did you say?
Let me see if I don't know if let me see if I have it for the yeah, I think I have it. Hold on one second. Let me see. Field goal percentage 62% from the floor.
I mean, come on now. Like what do you
50% from 3.
I mean, what do I ask for? I mean,
yeah, you're not asking for much else.
I mean, come on now. Yeah.
I mean, here's the thing with the US, right? I mean, any one of these guys at any moment could be your high scorer is the reality. I think though, when you look at like today's game, so the US goes 15 of 31 from 3. There's nobody beating the United States Olympic team if they're going to shoot close to 50% from the 3-point line. It's just not going to happen. I mean, it just is not going to happen. And the funny thing is, we talked about it last time that Steph really hasn't shot the 3 well. And I'm looking at his stats. He's shooting 25% from 3, and he was 0 for 1 today. So, look, Curry potentially, and we talked about it last week, that you would expect at some point with the shorter line that he would just have a game where he makes 6 or 7 threes. And if that happens, it's lights out. And I'm sure the U.S. is going to win that game, no problem. But if the team collectively shoots, I mean, if they shoot above 40%, I find it hard to believe that anybody left is going to touch them. And today going 15 to 31 against Brazil, obviously, who was overmatched, probably the worst team, I would say, in the quarterfinals. Greece, maybe if you take Giannis out, maybe collectively is worse, but obviously Giannis is leading scorer in the whole Olympics. And so he's, I think, despite the fact that his team isn't very good around him. He's had a great Olympics. He's shooting something like 73% from the floor in
Yeah.
his 4 games. So, but
So
yeah, the U.S. I just don't know. I mean, it's hard to believe that they're going to lose. But like we talked about last week, the 3-point math and uh, that's the one thing that I think could give them trouble if another team gets super hot and they can't make anything. And then they really haven't, I guess they played a couple close games in the preliminaries, but obviously in the tournament to this point, they haven't played a competitive game. So who knows? Maybe if the game gets close and it gets tight, maybe makes them vulnerable. But I find it hard to believe that anybody that's left in this tournament is going to give them much of a game. I think they probably win the next 2 games by double
so
figures. I would have to guess.
Durant just tweeted literally 3 minutes ago. I'm gonna read you the tweet, Mike.
Okay.
Durant, it's like 4 a.m. in France. What are you doing? You probably have practice tomorrow. Go to bed. All right, here we go. Records are meant to be broken. I'll hold on to this until another great comes along and passes me up. Lisa Leslie, you are a gold standard in basketball. I appreciate your love and support throughout the years. Much love to you always. It's all about the gold, baby. Let's go get it, fellas.
Yeah. I mean, well said. Well said. And look, Durant deserves a ton of credit. Anybody who plays at the level these guys play throughout the regular season and then is willing to commit to playing on their national team, obviously on an international level, it's much more common for guys to play with their national team in the off season. With the US, we're throwing together a team for a month at training camp and then putting them into whatever international tournament happens to be going on at that particular time. So for Durant to have played as well as he has over the entire course of his career, again, it's a credit to him because it's obviously something that you don't have to do. And not everybody does it. Not every star wants to be there. And he's been a guy that's consistently showed up for the U.S. team. I mean, when you look up and down the roster, we talked about it last week, player by player, and I don't really want to do that. But
No.
when you really look at it, I mean, any one of these guys, I mean, there's been obviously Embiid's had his moments with the egging on of the French crowd and then firing up the air ball and not playing in the second game. And Tatum, there was all the controversy that swirled around him after the first game when he didn't play. And he's been fine since then. I think even Halliburton, who's probably played the least of anybody, makes sense why when you look at the roster. Derek White's been a guy that has been a big contributor despite the fact that his selection over Jaylen Brown was kind of controversial. I don't think there's anybody that you look at this coming out and saying, man, this guy had a bad Olympic experience. Now, this could change, I guess, if they somehow don't win a gold medal. Suddenly things could turn in a
I can
different
tell you
direction.
someone that will be saying that.
What's that?
Plays for the French team.
Rudy Gobert?
Oh God, he's been pitiful. He's been exposed.
Well, so here's the thing. Okay. Coming in, I think France I believe they played 3 exhibition games, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And I think, had lost at one point. They had lost 5 games in a row. Maybe they played 4. I can't remember. But clearly, as the host team, not really the situation that you want to be in.
Yeah.
But at this point, you have to consider the French team winners because they get to the quarterfinals, beat Canada, who I think most everybody heading into the tournament, I think, felt that Germany, Canada, and the U.S. were probably the 3 best teams. Germany, based off their performance in the World Cup in the Philippines last year, and Canada with the number of NBA players that they had, and then obviously the U.S. And so for France to beat Canada today, and we'll talk a little bit about some of the Canadian players in just a second, but for France to win that, and now really they have to win 1 out of 2 games to medal. Now, granted, I'm sure they love to get gold or get to the championship game and have a chance to compete with the U.S., but the fact that now they have to win 1 out of 2 games to medal as the home country, I think you have to look at that. If you're them, I think you have to look at that as a win.
Well, I mean, I didn't say France. I just said Rudy Gobert as a person. He's
Right.
gonna
No,
walk
I mean,
away.
I'm right. I'm just extending it across the board that, yeah, I mean, clearly, look, Victor is the guy that rightfully so, that the French team is kind of, and Rudy and him play the same position. Hard to play those two guys together a ton, although you would think that in Olympic competition that you could get away with it, but it does look clunky when those two guys are on the floor together. But yeah,
Yeah.
Rudy's been, so I'm just looking at his stats over 4 games. So he's averaging, he's playing 16 minutes a game, and he's averaging 4.5 points a game, and he's averaging 5 rebounds a game. And how many blocks is he getting? 2 blocks per game. Versus Victor's averaging 14 and a half, 1.8 blocks, 11 rebounds. Victor's getting 3.5 assists. Rudy's getting 1. So clearly, and Victor's playing 29 minutes a game, and Rudy's playing 19. So it's sort of, I guess, the passing of the torch when it comes to
Yeah.
the French team. Although Evan Fournier is averaging 11.5 points per game, and he hasn't gotten off the bench for an NBA team, and I don't even know when the last time was that he was a relevant guy who
I mean,
wasn't just
he
named
didn't play
after his
any minutes this
contract.
year. Yeah. All right. So
Frankie
let's
smokes.
look ahead to the
Frankie smokes
USA.
5 a game.
Frankie smokes. Let's look ahead. So the Cavs, the Team USA is going to play Serbia on Thursday. Okay, and they've played them 3 times already. Looking at the
Two
Serbia
times already.
team.
This will be the third. Yeah,
Oh
two
yeah, it's
times.
2 times. This is the third time. Uh, they they ended up beating Australia in overtime. Jokic only had 21 today, 9 and 7. I mean, he was still very proficient, and Bogdanovich had 17, but he had a terrible game when you look at the stats, like 6 of 17, 3 of 9 from behind the arc, which is he was or 3 of 8 from behind the arc, 3 of 9 from the field, from inside the arc. So, but you look at this. I mean, I think this is probably like, but Serbia let Patty Mills, who once again Patty Mills isn't playing big roles anywhere. Serbia let Patty Mills score 26 points. They let Josh Giddey, who couldn't even play in the playoffs last year.
Giddy's been great though. Giddy's been awesome for Australia. Which, look, he didn't fit with that Oklahoma City team
When he had a lot of other
because of,
baggage going on too, a lot of other
yeah, he
baggage
did.
going
He
on.
did. He did. I, I think that I think that's going to be a trade that ends up helping both teams. And I think it's probably going to end up helping Josh Giddey's career. I don't know what it does for Chicago just because they're such a
Chicago's
mess,
terrible.
just generally speaking. But I do think that
Yeah,
Giddey's going to get better opportunities. Giddey's going to have a good season. I mean, the guy can play. He just, the thing that he cannot do is shoot the ball at a very high percentage from three. And because of that, he wasn't a good fit on Oklahoma City. And they also had lots of other guys, in particular Shea, that you want to obviously have the ball in his hands. And that's when Giddey's at his best. Now, again, maybe that caps your ceiling. If Giddey's your best player, that you're giving him the ball all the time, maybe that dooms you to be at best a 500 or a little better than that type of team. But clearly, I think Giddey is a good player. He's going to have a long NBA career, and he's a good player. I think Chicago is going to be happy with him. Again, I just don't know if he's your primary ball handler, what's your ceiling. But I do like Josh Giddey as a player, and he's played very well for Australia in this
yeah,
tournament.
yeah. So what I was getting at is if those guys are taking it to Serbia, you have to imagine that Team USA is going to be able to once again take care of business, right? Like
You
they're
would
going to take.
think. Now, here's the thing. So in the last game with Serbia, when Jokic played, the game was even. He sat out, I believe, 11 minutes, and they were minus 26 in those 11 minutes. So the question becomes, for one game, which is obviously this will be the most important game, it's a 40-minute game, unlike a 48-minute NBA game. Can Jokic play 38 of those minutes? Can he play all 40 minutes? And if he does that allow Serbia to at least, again, hang around, make it a close game where maybe the U.S. gets tight, maybe it comes down to a play or two, and that's the difference. I mean, I think that's what, if you're Serbia, that's what you're hanging your hat on is Jokic is going to play almost the entire game. And when that guy's on the floor, they've been competitive with the U.S. team. I think that's the formula if you're Serbia. Now, whether or not that translates in again a medal round game, and I don't know, it remains to be seen. But certainly, there's a pathway with as good as Jokic is. He's averaging like 19, 12 rebounds and almost 8 assists in 29 minutes of play. So clearly, he's been just as good as he's been during the NBA season. He's been equally as good in the Olympics. And so I would expect that he's going to play nearly this entire game. And if he does, I think Serbia probably has a chance to stick around. I still think U.S. probably eventually takes care of business and wears them down, especially when you talk about playing in an Olympic semifinal game and the fact that they're probably going to be locked in. But putting Jokic out on the floor for almost 40 minutes, at least if you're Serbia, you can talk yourself into giving that it gives you a chance.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, you're giving them more credit than I think they're gonna earn, in my opinion.
It may be
But
true. I mean, again, it may be true, but
but
just over the course of the two games they've played, when Jokic has been on the floor, it's been at least relatively competitive. And
oh,
maybe you just don't take him off the floor if you're Serbia. Who knows? Maybe they go with their regular rotation and he plays 30 minutes in that game and the U.S. ends up routing him, or maybe they just route him with Jokic on the floor. But Jokic being out there clearly gives them a better chance if he's out there for the majority of those 40 minutes.
yeah, I agree. All right, I need to take a quick pause. I need to take a quick pause, Mike. My wife just came down. There,
All right.
there's,
There you go.
Jake's stuffed animal is missing, and I need to go find it.
Okay. All right.
I'll be right
Good
back.
luck.
Sorry.
Oh, you're good.
All right, Molly found him. We're good. Sorry, Mike. I
Okay. Good
apologize.
job. That's all right, man. It's all
He takes
good.
the stuffed animal and he just throws it around the house, and then all the time, I don't know where I put him. Well, stop throwing him around the house. Anyways, okay.
That's it.
You were there once, probably. I don't know.
I
Maybe you
was
were.
there one. I've been there before. I've been there before.
Oh, hold on. Okay. All right. So where are we going? What are we going to talk about?
Canada. Let's talk about Canada.
Canada.
We got to talk about the disappointment for Canada. So let's go
Yeah.
there.
Okay. Let's go there. All right. All right. So then the other main thing that we have to talk about here is the disappointment that was Canada, and you know Dylan Brooks. What a shot in his mouth before the Olympics started, saying, "Oh, I think we beat USA, USA." You can't even get out of the quarterfinals, Dylan Brooks. They just once again, you know, they played France, who we talked about. They were struggling before the Olympics even started, but here they are. Canada. Um, your overall thoughts about this, Mike?
I think when you look at the Canadians, I mean, they have to be the most disappointing team in the Olympics and the most disappointed in themselves based on the expectations that I'm sure they had. So you come into the tournament for the Canadians and you have 10 NBA players on your team, which is more than anybody else except for the US. You have in Shea arguably one of the five best players in the world. And then you've got some other guys who are clearly above average NBA players. You start with Jamal Murray, and Jamal
Oh, he's
Murray has been just awful. I mean, he's been terrible in this tournament and did next to nothing. In 4 games, he's averaging 20 minutes a game. He's shooting 14% from three-point line. He's shooting 41% overall. He scored 6 points a game. He's -6 plus minus. He just has been terrible. He has not looked like himself, or at least the self that we saw in the Nuggets championship run. And I think if you're looking for a guy who is the biggest disappointment, Rudy Gobert's in that conversation, Jamal Murray's in that conversation, Dylan Brooks after his performance in the game today, where he
one.
was 1 of 9 from the floor, clearly is in that conversation. Although he was much better in the first 3 games than he was in this game today. Dylan Brooks' problem comes from running his mouth and not being able to back up what his mouth frequently says. But I think Murray, to me, Murray's the guy that's the most disappointing when you start looking at who, from an NBA standpoint, has a reputation. I know he's never been an all-star player, he's never been an all NBA player, but Jamal Murray, when you look at how he's performed in the playoffs on the biggest stages, he's been very, very, very good. And for him to come up so small for Canada in this tournament is it's pretty disappointing. And then you compare and contrast him with Shea. I mean, Shea comes in, he shoots 54% from the floor. He's all over the place, rebounding the ball, leading the team. Just he's a guy who lived up to everything that we thought he was at Oklahoma City. He carried that right over into the Canadian national team. And then RJ Barrett had a really good tournament too. He averaged 20 a game. And
I have to say, I think he's my big, like almost my biggest surprise, right?
Barrett,
Like,
yeah,
he's got to be because he just
he's a
played
guy
really,
who
really well.
look. Do we? I mean, I go back and forth. Like I watch him play when he was with the Knicks, and then when he gets to Toronto this year, and he's kind of I don't know what the right word is for RJ Barrett. He's kind of a boring player in that there's nothing about his game that you look at and you're like, wow, like that stands out. Like he's not a great shooter. He's not the most athletic, high flying guy. He's not a tremendous playmaker. He's just okay defensively. He looks like he has the tools to be better because he's long and he's pretty strong. It feels like he could be a high level defender, and he isn't really that. But yet, at the end of the day, he's a guy who does things. When you look at a box score from the NBA or you look at a box score from the Olympics, like he does stuff. And I think the question becomes, is it empty stats or is there something that we're just not seeing with this guy? And I don't know which one it is. Obviously, the Knicks getting rid of him felt like he had kind of maxed out what he was going to be and that there wasn't another step for him to take. But even if he doesn't take another step, I still feel like RJ Barrett he's an above average starter. The problem is, again, he was drafted third overall, and I think people had higher expectations for him. He was the number one player in his class coming out before he went to Duke, and he just never really lived up to that star potential. But I think RJ Barrett is a really, really good player. It's just a matter of is he ever going to take that next leap? I would probably argue no, but depending on what I have to pay him, I still think RJ Barrett is a guy that can help your team win both in this Olympics and in the NBA.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. So yeah, so then we've got, obviously we've got the country getting a chance to win a medal, which we talked about already. Um, I think they've got a
The only team we haven't talked about is Germany and
Germany
France.
and yeah, Germany, and that's what I'm gonna say. Like they got to play. They've got to play Germany. I could see France beating Germany, right? Like, could you see them beating Germany?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, look,
Like
it's clear. I don't think there's any doubt that Victor Wembanyama at this point, he may not play well, but there's a pretty decent chance that he's going to play really well and he's going to impact the game in ways that we haven't seen too many players at any level of the game be able to impact on both ends of the floor the way that Wembanyama can. So yeah, clearly I think that France could beat Germany. I would expect Germany to win that game, but I wouldn't be stunned, especially with their home crowd. I mean, that's going to be, you would think that that's going to be a pretty
rather
crazy
raucous,
atmosphere. Yeah,
rather raucous.
you would have to think so.
Yeah.
With France being the home team there, I would think that that would give them at least a little bit of a leg up. Germany's going to be playing in a hostile environment. I mean, here's the thing with Germany, it's interesting because clearly Dennis Schroeder has become, at least in NBA terms, he's been.
It's not Schroeder,
I think
Mike.
you could actually. Not Schroeder. That's the guy who plays the piano for Peanut with Charlie Brown.
I know.
But so ongoing joke for those of you who are new to the podcast. Anyway, Schroeder I think with him at this point, we could probably safely describe his NBA career that he's a journeyman. I think there was a point maybe when he was with the Hawks that people thought maybe he might develop into something slightly above that, but I think we can safely put his career into the journeyman category. But yet, for Germany, I mean, he was MVP last year of the World Cup in the Philippines, and he's been really good again in the Olympics. And then you look at Franz, and look, Franz signed the big extension, and there were people, I think, on both sides of the fence with that, right? There were people that thought, hey, you got to
Yeah.
lock up a young guy that's as good as he is. Then there are other people that were like, yeah, he didn't really progress this year as a shooter, and it was kind of tough. And I think this Olympics has sort of proven out to some degree, sort of both sides of it, in that Franz has been the leading scorer for Germany, and clearly they're one of four teams left in the tournament. I would say overall, based on what I've read and seen, that most people think that Franz has played well, and yet at the same time, with the shorter international line, he's shooting 20% from three. And if that's something that doesn't get solved, then his ceiling as an NBA player isn't nearly as high as if he could figure out a way to shoot at least league average from three. So, look, I mean, the thing with Germany is when you look at Franz and you look at Schroeder, they got Tice, who's a good NBA player. They had Isaac Bonga, who had some minutes with the Lakers, and I think he was with at least one other NBA team. So, and you got Mo Wagner. Like, and the thing with Germany is continuity wise, like this team's played together for several years. Basically, since the Wagner brothers have joined the national team, it's kind of been this same group. And so there's something to be said for that. And France is obviously a slightly new team because Victor didn't play in the World Cup last year. So obviously you're adding a big piece there. The US team is always different. Serbia has been together for a while, so they're probably again on the continuity side closer to Germany. But look, it's going to be tough for Germany to beat France. I think they're probably the better team, but when you're playing on the other team's home floor in the Olympics, could be a tough game, but we'll see.
Yeah. So, how what do you envision? Obviously, I feel like Team USA wins. I'm gonna go with the home team. I'm gonna go with USA France are the winners, Mike. I'm gonna I'm gonna curb that thought a little bit. USA France.
All right, I'll be contrarian. I'm going to go USA, Germany. I think US beats Serbia in a relatively close game. I still think they win by double figures. I'm going to say they win by 10 or 12, somewhere in that range. And then I think Germany takes care of business against France. Close game, but Germany wins it. And then I think the final, the US, I think they put the smackdown on Germany and win that one by 20 plus in the gold medal game. That's what I foresee happening.
Yep. Okay. So then, did you see the other news that came out today?
I don't know
Charles Barkley
if
is going to
oh,
finish
he's
out his
staying at
contract.
TNT.
He's going to stay
Yes.
at TNT. He is not going to go anywhere else. He feels like he can be an asset still, and he's not going to turn his back on the company that's had him for 20 some years. Um, so, I mad respect, Charles Barkley. Uh, and then,
That takes him through I believe 2032 if
so
I if I read.
this is the third year of the deal. So he's 7 more years after this
Because he
upcoming
was, didn't he
season.
sign it? I thought I saw he signed it in
So you're 32 is right.
2022.
32 is right.
Okay.
32 is right.
Okay. Got
So
it.
he's going to be doing he'll be doing the NCAA. I'm sure he'll do all the any of the golf stuff that they do. He's like, well, now I'm going to go do some MLB and NHL stuff or
There you go.
something.
Nice work,
Which
Chuck.
I mean, he'll always live in the whatever he's doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, he's
He's worth it.
entertaining. He's entertaining in any format, right? I mean, that's the honest truth is he's going to
Yeah.
be an entertaining personality. Now, whether or not his opinions on some of those other sports are even remotely correct or functional, that's a whole other story altogether.
He
But
just needs to tell funny stories, Mike. That's all he needs to
yeah,
do.
exactly right. Look, I mean, again, Charles Barkley is a personality. So obviously in basketball, he's probably slightly more valuable because he has some expertise to bring to the table. With other sports, I'm sure he can do his homework and get himself up to speed, and he can comment on golf or whatever else, baseball, as well as we can comment on football or some of the other things we sometimes talk about. So good. I mean, I'm glad that it's nice to have Barkley around. He's obviously an entertaining guy, and almost everybody to a person thinks that he's an entertaining commentator and like what enjoy watching him and enjoy hearing what he has to say, despite the fact that sometimes he has outrageous opinions, which makes him who he is. So,
Yep. All right. Anything else, Mike, that you want to talk about?
last thing, Markkinen, what do you think happens with him? Because today was the last day that he could sign, or rather that the Jazz could sign him, and then he could still be traded prior to the trade deadline. So everything that I read, that I saw coming out of Utah and coming from Markkanen's camp, was that he was going to sign with Utah, but he was going to wait until after August 6th, which would then prevent him from being able to be traded
Well,
during this season, which means he would assure himself of at least 1 year in Utah. So I
So
anticipate
Shams
that.
tweeted this earlier today, Mike.
Okay.
Lauri Markkinen and the Utah Jazz are expected to sign a massive long-term contract extension Wednesday or later, making him untradeable for the exactly what you just said.
Yeah. So I think that's probably going to happen in the next day or two, I would guess. And then Utah goes from there. I mean, it's interesting because to me, like I think Markkinen is 27, if I'm not mistaken. It's just interesting what Utah is trying to do. Clearly, there are many, many teams, and as we get closer to the season, we'll talk about this, but there are many teams that are into or going to be into full on tanking to try to get into this Cooper Flag, and then the kid the next year, AJ Dubinstaya, if I'm not, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but that kid, I don't know if you've seen any highlights of him at all.
No.
Quick, athletic, just, I mean, he's going to be good too. So there's a lot of people that want to get in on those two drafts. And so if you're Utah, clearly a player as good as Lauri Markkinen doesn't necessarily help you to tank into those two lotteries. So it'll be interesting to see how Utah approaches the season. It feels like the last two seasons they've started out too good, and then they've kind of had to really tap the brakes with well-timed injuries and load management and different things and trades to sort of knock their record back down. And so it'll be interesting to see what Utah does, because clearly Markkinen is a guy who can help you win. And if you have him out on the floor, it's going to be hard to tank down with some of the teams that are going to be at the very bottom of the standings this year. And we will see. I don't have a good sense of what Utah's plan is. I think it's a good move to sign Markkinen. I mean, I think if you're going to be good at some point, even over the next 4 years, I mean, Markkinen is going to be 31 in 4 years. I feel like that gives you a window to regain and build a competitive team. But I have no idea what Danny Ainge is thinking at this point.
Who knows? Who knows?
So that was the last bit of real NBA news that I had. So unless you have anything else, we can wrap it there.
No, I'm gonna ask you one non-basketball related question.
Sure.
How do you feel about the Browns probably moving to Brook Park? Do you care?
All right. So we were having a discussion about this today. I was talking to some people. And so I have a couple thoughts. So one is, when you look at the tradition of Browns football, it feels like playing outdoors and having the stadium on the lake and the weather that comes with that has been a part of sort of the Browns tradition, right? So there's that piece of it. Just the fact that it feels like Browns football should be played
The losing tradition?
outdoors in cold weather. That it should be played outdoors in cold weather. Second piece is that when old Cleveland Municipal Stadium got torn down, the new stadium should have never been built on the same site on the lakefront. That land that the stadium sits on currently and that the old stadium sat on, to me, from a civic standpoint, was worth way, 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 way more with other uses, whatever those uses might be, whether that's public space, whether it's condos, whether it's whatever. To bring vibrancy to the city, that land was mismanaged or misused to put the Browns Stadium on that valuable of a piece of real estate. So there's that piece of it. Then when you talk about moving to the suburbs versus being downtown, obviously they're not going to put a stadium in any other site downtown. And there's been trends over the course of the last 25 years of, particularly in the NBA, of teams moving from out, like the Cavs who were in Richfield, moving to downtown. Detroit was out in Auburn Hills, moved into downtown Detroit. Football has been kind of a little bit different just because of the size of the stadium and that kind of thing and what teams have had to do. But I'm okay with the Browns moving out to the suburbs. It really doesn't, to be honest, it doesn't matter to me one way or the other. I've been to 2 Browns games in my life, so I really don't care particularly where the stadium is in any way, shape, or form like that. What is interesting is, are they going to dome it? Are they not going to dome it?
Oh, it's going to be domed. It's going to be domed. It's going to be. There's been reports swirling. It's going to be announced within the next 2 weeks. It's going to be a $3.8 billion dome with
So,
complex around it.
so, so here's the thing, right? If you dome it, you take away my first point, which is the weather. You eliminate the weather. Let's put it this way. It's much more interesting for me, and I don't know about for you, but it's much more interesting to watch a football game like the Chiefs Dolphins game this year that's in the sub-zero temperatures than it is to watch a game in Ford Field with the Detroit Lions playing in a dome stadium. It's just a more interesting game when the weather factors into it. So I'll be disappointed that the game is going to be indoors. Now, if you're the Browns, now you build a whole different type of team. It changes the way that you put together a roster and all those kinds of things. So I don't like it from that standpoint because I don't really care. Look, if you're a fan who goes to games, I mean, to me, that's a no brainer, right? You'd rather sit in a dome than sit down on the lakefront in 15-degree weather with, 30-degree, 30-mile-an-hour winds whipping off the lake. But I don't go to games, so I don't really care. So on TV, the product for me is better when weather is involved. And then you take it another step further and you talk about the use of the building. Clearly, a dome is going to enable the building to get more use than an open air stadium in Cleveland, where basically it sits during the winter. You can't use it at all. And even during the summertime, it's just not utilized enough because you only have such a limited number of home games that the Cleveland Browns are going to play. So overall, it's probably a win. The one thing that I don't like about it is you miss out on the weather element that has always been a part of Cleveland Browns football. And just me selfishly, I'd rather watch a game that has mud and snow and ice and cold and all that type of thing, as opposed to just watching sort of an antiseptic product that's on turf indoors. But that's just me.
Yeah, I'm all. I'll be honest with you, Mike. I'm all for it. Just
All right.
I just I think everything that I'm reading makes a lot of sense. I mean, like you said, that building, that spot again.
Are they going to knock it down?
I I think they have to. What are they going to do with
Yeah,
it?
I mean, I think that. Yeah,
Just
I
sit
mean, I
there?
think I think immediately as soon as the new stadium is ready, I think that you just
And
knock it down and
and
then they
and the
figure
whole
out.
and the whole city of Cleveland proposal, like what a joke that was. Like that's pomp and circumstance. That's trying to say, oh, we tried.
Right.
Like it's not even. It wasn't. I mean, there was a report that came out today that an audit was done in the stadium, and it's like currently in need of like $10 million worth of emergency repairs that haven't been done yet. And I mean, I don't. I know you did not probably pay any attention to SummerSlam this weekend that was down there. However, there was a lot of complaints about how certain aspects of the stadium came into like they were clearly not prepared for it in a
Well,
sense. And I
that
don't know if that's
stadium's
the
had
WWE.
problems right from the moment it was built, right? I mean, it feels like right from the moment that it opened that there were always complaints about just the stadium in general, its configuration, the restrooms, the whole like everything about it. People were not necessarily happy about it. They didn't feel like it had the type of character that you'd want
They're missing
a
the
stadium
troughs,
to
man.
have.
Missing the
Yeah,
trough.
exactly, exactly. But so look, I don't think anybody's going to miss that stadium in particular. There definitely will be people who will miss the Browns being on the lakefront. There are people like me who will miss seeing the team play in the elements. And yet at the same time, logistically, I think it probably makes the most sense. If you're going to invest in a new building, it makes sense to dome it because now you can use that building year round for whatever you want to use it for. And I'm assuming that for the price tag that they have, that they'll make it, I don't know if the word is convertible, but they'll make it in a way that we'll figure it out so that it can be used in lots of different ways and not just sit idle for 340 days a year.
I mean, you can have concerts. You can have. They could theoretically do what the Dallas has done and Indianapolis has done, and have like March Madness, the Final Four in it. You could do a whole lot of things. Like
Are the Browns
it's,
getting a Super Bowl? Is that part of the deal if Haslam gets this thing built?
I would assume, which that's millions upon millions of dollars, right? The fact that it's going to be right next to the airport is huge. I mean,
Yes.
um, it's going to be huge for the city of Brook Park and city like Cuyahoga, like this portion of Cuyahoga County, because they're going to have, obviously there's part of that is like they're going to be building a whole restaurant district. They're obviously going to have to build more hotels because they don't think the
Right.
Fairfield Inn that's there or whatever's there is going to be is going to be enough. They're going to have to put a lot more hotels there, but that will come.
Well, you can take it one step further too. And I know that maybe I'm overrating this simply because there just isn't that many games, but the Browns training facility, for people who don't know, is in suburban Cleveland, which is in Berea. And so
It's
a
5 minutes from there.
neighboring city to Brook Park. So now, not that the drive from Berea to downtown Cleveland for the games is excruciating, but now if you're a player, your practice facility and where you play are going to be located within 5 or 10 minutes of one another, which when you start talking about where am I going to live, that decision becomes even easier. Kind of the
I
opposite,
mean,
actually,
most
of what
players are living in the burbs anyways. I mean, they're
right,
not living. They're
correct,
not living.
correct. Although I bet there are probably more than you think that live downtown in condos
In
and
like an apartment.
penthouses, probably than we think. Yeah, probably than we think. But I mean, again, I really have no idea. Haven't been tracking it.
I
But
mean,
and then, but
I think I remember like a few years ago they had like a survey, and I think Westlake, Westlake, Lakewood, and Strongsville were like in the top three.
yeah, which makes sense.
Olmsted Falls had a few players I know because one of the kids was in our school. One of the
Okay.
kids of the players was in our school when I was teaching fourth grade the first time around. So, I mean, I don't know what all ultimately, and this we can end this here, Mike. But I think this is a good, smart move. Obviously, we're not going to see the fruit. Talking like 6 years down or 5 years down the pike at the earliest. I think because I think that's when the lease is up and they have to honor the lease. That was part of the our last agreement with the renovations. I think it's 2029. So we're still talking. We're talking 5 years down the road here.
Right.
But and it's not like this project's going to happen overnight. Although it will get done quickly, if you know, as quickly as
If
it
and when
can
it
get done.
happens,
I'll
yeah,
tell you that
they'll
much.
get moving on it. Well,
No, it's happening, Mike. I'm telling
The
you.
Cavs are moving. The Cavs are moving downtown, right, with their practice facility, correct?
Yep. Yep.
So
Yep. Yep.
the Cavs built a new practice facility in Independence, which for those of you who don't live in Cleveland, that is close to where, or at least closer than downtown to where LeBron lived. And so that practice facility was basically built to, I don't know if
Placate.
appease is the right word, but to certainly keep LeBron happy. And that thing was built that's probably 15 years old, maybe not even that old, 10,
But didn't
12, I don't know, somewhere in
Gilbert
there.
paid for all that, right? He paid for all
I
that.
believe so. And so now the Cavs are going to move to a downtown location right on the river, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
I feel like so their Cavs are going the opposite direction. Browns are moving completely out of the city, and the Cavs will bring all their operations into downtown Cleveland. So two, I guess, opposite tracks in terms of figuring out where you're going to put your facilities. So anyway, yeah, it'll be interesting to see if the Browns stadium, what happens with it. It's funny because not getting a local newspaper, you got to actively seek out information about things. And to be honest, I haven't actively sought out much information. I've just seen kind of headlines about it. So my discussion today with a couple people at work, and then you here tonight has made me a more educated Cleveland Browns consumer. So anyway, anything else?
Nope, I think that's it.
All right, let's leave it there. We got a Olympic basketball talk. We got some Cleveland Browns football talk. And if for some reason one of these last two games, the semifinals or the finals of the Olympics, necessitates an emergency pod, maybe we'll jump on. If not, we will be back with our regularly scheduled interview episodes on Thursday and Sunday night, and then we'll be back for an NBA pod next Tuesday night / Wednesday morning. So thanks for checking this one out, and we will catch you on our next episode. Thanks.